WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. We are never far removed from the National Football League season, and here in Baltimore over the weekend, not just a little dose of reality in regard to the Ravens signing a cornerback and making some Friday splash news, but of course, Torrey Smith putting together his charity basketball game on Sunday down at the Royal Farms Arena. I participated in the early parts of the festivities around there. So many people to see and so many guys that this guy remembers. Luke Jones joins us now live via satellite to talk all things Ravens. First off, Ray Rice was there. Ed Reed was there. Anquan Bolden was there. Jacoby Jones was there. Tyrod Taylor was there. It was quite the old home week for the Super Bowl 47 champs, Luke.
Yeah, and it's always fun when you get the gang back together for some of these special occasions. I mean, we remember the anniversary celebration that they did at the stadium a few years back for the Super Bowl 35 team. So, at some point here in the over the next 5-6 years, we'll get into that Super Bowl 47 team getting back together. And I just think it's regardless of the fact that Torrey Smith, who was rumored to potentially be coming back to the Ravens, he ends up in Philadelphia. I just think it's cool that he continues to play this charity game, and so many of those old Ravens friends come back to support him. It's just a fun little get together, and it's fun for the fans who head out to the arena to check out some football players playing basketball, but all of it for a good cause.
Yeah, well, and of course, Ray Rice pronounced that, he could still play football, and, Anquan Bolden had nothing to say, and Jacoby Jones didn't say much either, but, Ed Reed came back, and, you see that friendship and that bond. There were other NFL players involved, Vernon Davis as well, and, I saw over the weekend Justin Forsett's wife gave birth, so he missed that, but, the Ravens clan, the group grows every year, and new players come into the fold, new players leave, and as Torrey Smith is still here doing good work, the Ravens pick up a free agent over the weekend and a cornerback and a guy that comes with a very, very solid reputation of being a really good dude.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Carr's not a star corner. I mean, he's not a guy who's been to Pro Bowls and has been, that kind of caliber player, but he's been rock solid. I mean, this guy has been really, even over the last few years with Dallas, he's a legitimate number 2 corner, starting caliber corner. He's never missed a game in his career, which I'm sure everyone will be knocking on wood that continues, given the fact that we know what the Ravens have dealt with in their secondary really for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, even go back to the Super Bowl year. They lost Ladarius Webb, who at that point was one of the best corners in the AFC and was trending toward being a Pro Bowl kind of talent in the midst of that eventual championship at the end of that season. So we've seen them have their issues in the secondary. I mean, Jimmy Smith, for all the talent, we've seen him have problems staying on the field. The Ravens had been linked to Morris Claiborne, Carr's teammate in Dallas, former first-round pick, lots of talent, but a guy who's missed 40% of his games in his 5-year career. So I think this was a case of the Ravens looking at a player who is a little longer in the tooth. He's a guy on the wrong side of 30, not much past 30, but he's over 30 regardless, but has been durable, has been dependable. I think for as much as we kind of just think about injuries as being a luck kind of thing, and I think it can be in some cases. I mean, if your leg gets rolled up and you tear a ligament.
You know what, man? Since the Super Bowl, it's felt like a way of life around here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they've had, for all the good luck they had in that year, Jameel McClain and Ladarius Webb notwithstanding,
right.
They maintain good health, which is how they won a Super Bowl. They haven't had that good fortune so much since then.
Yeah, and some of it's luck, and sometimes you do have players who just can't stay on the field. Morris Claiborne is a guy who hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's had an array of different ailments, whereas Brandon Carr has never missed a game. And you don't know no one knows if that's going to continue this year, but I think the Ravens saw a guy who wasn't going to be a lucrative commitment. It's officially a 4-year deal, but it's a 1-year deal with team options. I mean, that's how it's structured. So it's kind of a pay-as-you-go. If he continues to play well in 2017, the Ravens will probably have him back for another year, and they'll just go year to year with that.
There's a lot of that going on. I'm going to be talking with Andrew Brand about that later on in the week. He wrote a great piece out at the Monday Morning Quarterback about where the guarantees were in these deals and the one-year deals being signed. And we talked about Nelson Cruz a couple of years ago and Trumbo, right, in the baseball side. There's a lot of that going on in the NFL as well, and taking advantage of that is, how you win championships, quite frankly. It has been, for the Ravens, some of these kinds of guys, these Matt Burke type of signings. I know we've talked about Nick Mangold around here as well, but it's been those kinds of veteran ads that really make the difference. It's made all the difference for Belichick over the years.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, as much as and look, I've talked a lot about the Ravens needing to get younger. So I'm not going to be hypocritical here. But at the same time, you do need a mix. You need to build your core. You need your long-standing sustainability to be through the draft, because those are the young players, one. Those are your cheap players for the first 4 or 5 years that they're with you. So that's how you can really lay the foundation for a championship caliber team. And when you miss on some of those, you end up having to fill in more gaps. You end up having to cover up your tracks a little bit more. And that's where the Ravens have kind of been the last few years, quite frankly. They've had to lean a little bit more on some free agents at certain positions where, you have a bust in Matt Elam and Terrence Brooks or Arthur Brown. I mean, they've had to do that. But at the same time, it can't be all about the draft either. I mean, look at the 2000 Ravens. They had a number of veteran players who came in from elsewhere and were major contributors. And 2012. I mean, the Ravens don't win a Super Bowl without Anquan Boldin. They don't win a Super Bowl without Jacoby Jones. I mean, just go down the list. So it needs to be a balance. And you're hoping that Brandon Carr is a guy who can help stabilize that secondary a little bit. Jimmy Smith is still the best cornerback they have. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I think there's probably a decent argument at this point as far as Tavon Young after a successful rookie year going into year two. Where does he rank compared to Brandon Carr? It's possible that Tavon Young could still start in the base defense, but either way,
they're not going to play base a whole lot. I mean, that's right. Their base is going to be nickel-y kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Well, that's the NFL. I mean, you're in the nickel over half the time at this point. I mean, that's just the reality of the league in 2017. So he's going to play a big part, regardless of whether he's officially a starter or not. He's going to be an outside corner. They're going to slide Tavon Young to the slot, presumably. And the thing is, the way this deal is structured, and it's not a lucrative financial commitment, they're still going to take a corner early. Now, they might not take a corner in the first round now, and they were never guaranteed to do that anyway because they do have so many positions that they, frankly, need to address. But I think they're still very much in a position where they can take a corner on day one or day two, hopefully no later than that, because this is supposed to be a good corner draft, and you'd like to get a guy that you feel can be a starter for you in the near future and add to that depth. I mean, the Ravens, we've seen it. How many years in a row now have the Ravens been in a position where they've had to start 4 or 5 different guys at corner over the course of the season because of either injury or poor performance? I mean, that's a slippery slope, and that's why I've said all along, you can't just have 2 guys and think, well, if we have an okay slot corner, we have an okay number 3, we'll probably get by. No, you won't, because inevitably your number 4 and your number 5 are going to have to play. So right now, the Ravens appear to be in good shape from a top 3 standpoint, hopefully with Jimmy Smith being able to stay on the field, hopefully with Brandon Carr doing what he's done over the first 9 years of his career, first 10 years of his career, and you're hoping that Tavon Young takes a step from what was a successful rookie year. So you have a really nice base of your top 3 to go on. Now you need to add to that, and some of that might be a couple young guys, the Maurice Kennedys, the Sheldon Prices, those guys that they already have on the roster. One of those guys could emerge as being a nice depth guy, and then maybe you draft another corner early on, and then now you have the makings of a really nice-looking secondary, of course, with Eric Weddle and the newcomer Tony Jefferson now in the that starting safety tandem. So it's something that has been something that I've really clamored for a lot with them. Some years saying they feeling that they haven't done enough at the cornerback position. I know there's people within the organization who have felt that they haven't always done enough with.
Well, they haven't overdone it. They've never had depth.
No,
It's been the thinnest spot. It's been the spot that's been the most vulnerable, and it's the spot that's been inevitably the most exposed in the end. It's been their Achilles heel.
There's not a lot of quality around the league. I mean, it's tough to find those guys. I mean, so I don't think the Ravens are alone in talking about their secondary depth.
And trying to figure out how to mark Antonio Brown.
Yeah, but there have certainly been some times where you look at what they've done in the offseason or what they haven't done in the offseason and said, there have been times where I've identified, you and I have talked about it in July and August before the season even starts, and we're flat out saying they don't have enough depth in the secondary. I mean, that's going to be a problem. I mean, you can just see it coming from a mile away, especially when you do have a number one corner who's making big money, who unfortunately has had some injury issues. I mean, Jimmy Smith hasn't been able to stay on the field as much as you'd like to see. And we saw last year what kind of dramatic drop-off there was when he was out of action.
Quarter to quarter. And especially when we saw, Des Bryant, when you see Odell Beckham, when you see top-notch guys, you have to have a top-notch corner. Otherwise, there's that 1 1st and 10 that's going to get you, or that 1 3rd and 8 that's going to get you, and it's going to be the difference between a field goal and winning, and or losing and feeling sorry for yourself on a flight home from someplace.
Yeah, I mean, and you're going to have some drop off because you're not going to have backups that are as good as your starters. I mean, that's the reality. No one has that, but you have to have at least enough depth that you don't fall off a cliff. I mean, let's face it. I mean, this Ravens defense was good this past year when Jimmy Smith was on the field. When he wasn't on the field, that pass defense was pretty poor. I mean, it's just the way it was. So can you make it that you have enough depth that if you do lose them, and hopefully you don't, but if you do, can you still compete? Can you still be in position where you're going to be able to still win games? And that's where the Ravens really struggled last year without him, and it's where they've really struggled the last few years with their lack of depth. So I think Brandon Carr, he's not a high-ceiling guy in the same way that you might look at Morris Claiborne, who's entering year 6 and kind of finally looked like he was putting it together last year, even though he got hurt again. So he doesn't have that same kind of ceiling, but Brandon Carr has a higher floor. I think he's a more reliable player. I think he's more reliable than some of the other corners that are out there on the market. And, hey, if it doesn't work out, the Ravens move on next offseason and, only minimal consequence on the salary cap.
He is Luke Jones. He covers all things baseball, stays up late with the World Baseball Classic, and still laments the requiem for the Maryland Terps, who left the tournament. The NIT might have left them in the tournament longer. Instead, we will sit around this weekend and watch the Sweet 16 and await opening day. And this slow-moving free agency sort of picked up steam last week, Luke. And not only did the Ravens sign a couple of guys, but they pretty much exhausted it all, right? Like, all of a sudden, we're not so much on the old WNST tech search for the next big thing. There's probably not a whole lot of big things happening here between now and the draft, right?
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by this, and I've expressed my concerns to you about the offense. There's no doubt about it. I'm not, this isn't me saying that Ozzie Newsome and company aren't aware that they have work to do in their offense, but I am very fascinated to see how it's going to get done. Because, and we don't know the specific terms of Dennis Pitta's restructure, but, they cleared some cap dollars there, but not a lucrative amount. And, they don't have a whole lot of cap space left. There's some room to make a couple moves, but not big-ticket items. For one thing, there aren't really many big-ticket items out there still at this point as we're getting into almost 2 weeks in the free agency, and really 2 weeks when you think about when the negotiating window really started, the tampering started. So I'm really interested to see how they're going to address right tackle, to see how they're going to address center, to see how they're going to address wide receiver. That's the big one with me. I'm going to be very bullish and very skeptical about that position because history suggests I should.
Well, they're going to have to get a veteran who has some level of productivity, and I don't know where that guy exists right now, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure it's there on the market right now. It might be that the Ravens make a trade, and who it is, who knows? I mean, I know Philadelphia has talked about Jordan Matthews. He would be a slot possession guy that, I don't know if he solves the Ravens' issue there, but I think he could be part of the solution. I don't know if there's another veteran out there who, potentially whether it's around the draft, whether it's before then. I mean, there are all kinds of different things that can happen. But I will say this. When you look at where the offense is now, with the number of holes they have there, with the fact that they still would like to add a pass rusher, and I think there's going to be some opportunities for them to do that middle of the first round based on how we think the board could fall. And no one really knows that yet. There's still a lot that can happen here over the next 5 weeks leading up to the draft. But I think history would tell us, Ness, that of all those spots we're talking about right now, at least one of those is going to end up being filled internally, whether it's a draft pick or whether, or not counting the draft. One of those spots is going to end up being filled by someone who's already on this roster. We talked about this 2 years ago. Remember when Owen Daniels left and the Ravens, they drafted Max Williams, but they didn't add a veteran tight end. Why? Because they thought Crockett Gilmore could play at a high level, and he did in 2015 until some of the injuries caught up with him. I recall after the 2013 season, everyone was talking about, okay, well, the Ravens need a right tackle. Michael Orr left via free agency. Well, they knew that Rick Wagner could do the job, or they at least thought that Rick Wagner could do the job, and turned out they were right about that. So, I don't know if it's John Urschel or Ryan Jensen at center. I don't know if it's DeAndre Wesley or Stefan Nembot at right tackle, two guys that they've kind of redshirted the last year plus to keep in the organization. I don't think that wide receiver is on the roster right now. Because even if they have high hopes for Brashad Perriman, he's still too similar to Mike Wallace in what they do. They still need that intermediate guy. But fullback. Here's something we haven't talked about. Look at the Ravens' surplus of tight ends. What's not to say that they couldn't go to a guy like Nick Boyle, who's a pretty good blocker, and turn him into more of an H-back, fullback kind of guy? I mean, who knows? I don't know if they're doing that, but those conversations might be happening right now. And if you can solve one of those pieces, if you can fill one of those positions internally, then that's one less, quote, need that you have going into the draft, where when you have too many needs in the draft, what happens? You end up reaching. You end up taking a guy because he plays a position rather than a certain position rather than he's.
Well, this is
truly the
more
best
that
player
kind of draft than
remaining.
any other draft I've seen, right? Where you look at it and say, they got to get a corner, they've got to get a rush in, they've got to get a wide receiver. They must select those positions. They probably have to get a right tackle too, right? Somewhere in there, they have to take their shot on all of those guys. I don't see him taking another running back as an example, right? They could take a center, I guess, if they were hot and bothered about a center in the first round, although it's not a deep that would be something you'd think about. Like, that would be smart to get a better center, right?
Yeah, I mean, and right now, John Urschel is kind of he's the default starting center right now. I mean, because Jeremy Zutta's no longer on the roster. And, the thing is, some of those positions, like center, for example, there might be a guy in the second or third round, a guy that could be there in the second or third round that could come in and hypothetically start. And, not be a top 5 guy, but might be a guy that at worst, at the very beginning, might be as good as Jeremy Zutta. And if you have that, well, at the very least, you're no worse off than you were, and there's more upside to grow. So, the thing is, it's just so difficult to project. The center position, you look at this draft, there are a couple guys there in that, kind of have that second round grade, third round grade from some of the experts, but do you know for sure that they're going to be there? Ethan Posich from LSU, I know is a guy that is one of the higher rated centers in this draft. He's a second or third round guy, but can the Ravens really have confidence that he's going to be there when they pick in the second round, or more likely, is he going to be there in the third round? It's tough to really project that. So, ultimately, like I said, of all those positions that we've talked about, there's probably going to be one of those that they don't adequately address in the draft, or they don't adequately address with a free agent between now and the start of the season. And you know what? It's going to have to be on some internal option at one of those spots to step up. It's inevitable. You can't fill 5 needs in the draft with your top 2 or 3 picks. Do the math. You can't do that unless you have a draft where you have an incredible number of day 1 and day 2 picks. not unlike what the Cleveland Browns have right now, I suppose.
Well, and we've had those around here 15 years ago and kind of
Yeah.
got spoiled by it all, right? Literally.
But it's just it's one of those things.
Cowboys had a good one last year.
No team is going to address all of their needs. You might get a player who plays that position, but no team is going to fully address all of their needs. Even the Super Bowl champions last year, the Patriots, they had some warts on that roster. Go back 2 years ago. Look at Denver. I mean, look at the issues they had with that offense at that point in time. Not just Peyton Manning, but getting a consistent running game. I mean, even the Super Bowl champion, even the top teams that make it to championship weekend, they're going to have some flaws and some weaknesses on their roster. It's just, can you find enough talent? Can you have enough strengths on your roster to cover up? And that's where we go back to that broken record discussion that you and I have had so many times over the last couple of years. That's where you need your playmakers. That's where you need those guys at the top of your roster that cover up for deficiencies. Ed Reed was a perfect example of that for how many years? How many years did the Ravens win with having substandard offenses? Why? Because they had a guy like Ed Reed on the opposite side of the ball who would turn into instant offense by creating a turnover or picking up a fumble.
Defense creating points, man. Can you imagine what an incredible bonus that is for any team, and especially a team that, quite frankly, was struggling a whole lot with the offense around that point.
Yeah, and the way you look at the Ravens right now, and look, it's late March. I mean, they're not playing a game for another 5.5 months. That means anything, but the way they look right now, the defense is certainly trending in a positive direction, even if they still need to address pass rusher, even if they still need to add some more depth here and there. But the defense, I think if they had to go out there and play a game right now, you'd feel pretty good about that. Even if you'd still say, well, the pass rush, I don't know about Matt Judon and Terrell Suggs is a year older. I think you'd still feel good enough about the other additions that they've made where you'd feel pretty good about this defense. The offense, on the other hand, there's a lot of work to be done. There's no doubt about that. So if you do have a defense, and let's keep in mind, this Ravens defense did force a lot of turnovers last year. That's as much as everyone focuses on what happened in December with that defense, and I get that, and I'm not saying that anyone should ignore that. This team did force a lot of turnovers last year, a lot more than they had the previous 2 years. So that's something that I think a lot of it had to do with the addition of Eric Weddle on the back end. I think that's probably the biggest reason, and I'll give a tip of the cap to Leslie Frazier, of course, who's moved on since last year. But I think for what this offense is going to look like, and probably going to be counting on some youth at some key positions, just the way it's looking right now, or at least some inexperienced guys at some starting positions. They're going to need their defense to play at a really high level because as it stands right now, the offense is worse than it was at the end of last year. And
don't have to play this week. Ozzie would point that out. Don't have to play this week.
Oh, yeah. They'll make some additions. But at the same time, it's a tough bill of goods that you'd be trying to sell to say that the Ravens are going to have a top 10 offense next year. A lot would have to go right. Now, can it be good enough where it's competitive and be at least top half of the league? Then, hey, if you have a top 5 defense with a top half of the league offense, that's probably a
Hey, we have the best kicker. Let's not forget that. Throw that in there. We got the best kicker.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's
so the special that's a great X factor for the Ravens that they have. They've paid handsomely for it, so it should be a big X factor. But it's all about filling as many puzzle pieces in as you can, and hoping that at the end of the day you'll stay healthy. You'll get some balls that bounce your way in some close games, and we'll see what happens. I mean, certainly the Ravens are trying to build toward that. They've done a lot, but they've got a lot to do still, and really fascinated to see how that's going to play out, given the fact that most of their cap room has been spent at this point.
Last thing for you, because I don't know how much Ravens we're going to talk around here this week with March Madness and World Baseball and Opening Day coming up. Eric Weddle and leadership and what we've talked about. Anything you want to say about that? Because I'm an unabashed fan. I knew I'd be a fan coming in. I haven't run into him. I haven't bothered him. I haven't texted him. I probably should invite him on the show and just to rap a little bit. But he's rolled his sleeves up. He's an all-in guy, right? He is a John Harbaugh special and a guy that I think the people around the building wish that he had spent his whole career around here.
Yeah, and it's really been impressive to see him buy in and embrace his new home. I mean, you're talking about a guy who spent nearly a decade in San Diego, and that there were hurt feelings there. He's even, he still will take an occasional shot when the Chargers let go of a former teammate of his, and
and it doesn't feel like it would even be his style, but he's just so pissed, right? He's so competitive.
I mean, and I don't even know if it's so much being vindictive as it's just he was genuinely hurt because he had made San Diego his home, and he felt that, hey, I can still play, and hey, the results kind of spoke for themselves. I
don't think he has any regrets at all, because I don't think he wanted to pack his bags and go up to L.A. and be a part of that. I think he felt like he got off the boat a year. He's in good shape. He's in good hands here. He loves it here. He really does.
Yeah, but all of that, given that kind of history, you kind of wonder what a guy is going to be. And that's not to say that a guy will be a malcontent, but you wonder, is this going to be a guy who spends the season here, shows up to work, works hard, plays well, but is then going to kind of wave bye-bye then and go back to San Diego in the off season, and hey, you'll hear from him again April OTAs, and he might pay attention to some off-season moves, but he's going to get his time away. But no, this guy has embraced being a Raven. He has been a recruiter, and he's been a guy that feels like he's been here a lot longer than he has. And I think I'm trying to think of some some veteran free agents who come in and fit in that well. And
Steve Smith
you can probably speak better than this. I think of Rod Woodson. I think of Shannon Sharp when he came in at clearly a very turbulent time for the organization with what Ray Lewis was going through at the time. And he acted like he'd been there for a long time.
This organization has a long history of this, though. Really, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it was Trevor Price, whether it's Matt Burke, whether it's Anquan Bolden, and I know that was a different circumstance.
Yeah.
It's a desirable place for guys to come and play. And I think when they leave, it's a little different in different places. I mean, I've been told that by a lot of guys. Not everywhere. And look, Jarrett Johnson went the other way, right? Like, Jarrett Johnson left Baltimore, in a way that they just couldn't pay him what he was worth. He went out there, and when the time came for free agency to happen, his buddy Eric Weddle came out here, and everything he told him about it. I mean, I think Eric's very, very happy, and I think he believes they have a chance to win. I'm with you on everything you've said about them being a top 10 defense. And, and I've said all along, if they're going to win a championship next year, if you're going to get me to buy into that, they got a lot of work to do. And that's not being mean. That's just the reality of it. And I still think they have a lot of work to do. But time will tell.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's when you have some leadership. Part of what makes Eric Weddle that special of a leader is he can still play. It's great to be a leader, but if you can't play, it's not going to resonate with your teammates. They'll like you as being a good guy, and they'll respect you as a person, but you have to be able to do it on the field. And that's what has made his transition so smooth. He's so cerebral. It reminds you very much of, as much as he doesn't get credit for it, Terrell Suggs, very cerebral player. Obviously, he learned that from guys like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, who were so cerebral in just their approach, their preparation, their film study, guys that were actively participating in meetings, asking questions, coming up with their own ideas. He's one of those kind of guys. I mean, that's where he fits in so well. I mean, players were talking about it even during training camp last year that they were calling him Coach Weddle with affection. I mean, it's just he's just been that welcome of an addition, and now to see him take that a step further, that he's no longer that newcomer, he's one of the veterans recruiting other guys to come here. That's pretty special. That's something that a lot of players, one, don't really have an interest in doing, and two, a lot of players
couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players, even some players that are good players, I mean, they don't have the cachet, or they don't have the personality for it. They don't have the interest for it. I mean, but he's bought in. And, for however much longer he ends up playing, and hopefully he plays at a high level for a couple more years, it's just, it's been fun to see. And, you see a guy like that, that's where I think you hope that the Ravens can get back to where they were 5-6 years ago and give that guy a chance to win a championship before his career's over.
All right, man. Well, we will continue to stay in touch. I know the hockey thing's not your thing with Coach Trotz out at Greenmount Station on Monday night, but you'll be absent from that, but readying for opening day and staying up very late with the WBC. Busy times around here, and it kind of sucks being thrown out of March Madness, right? Like, we could sit here and lament the Terps last Friday morning and feel sorry for ourselves, and we knew the Mount wasn't going to get very far with Villanova. We didn't know Villanova wasn't going to get very far, but the Michigan story. I mean, it hasn't been as exciting, but it really stinks when your team gets thrown out. I mean, if they can make it to the 16, you buy yourself that extra 4 or 5 days. It really stretches the week out. It feels like a long time ago the Terps got eliminated, to be honest.
Yeah,
with you.
It's such a fleeting feeling when you get knocked out early. I mean, it's just it ends that quickly. And I guess now maybe the sting of it lessens a little bit when you see what Xavier's been able to do. And the fact that they just destroyed Florida State, and you say, okay, maybe the Terps ran into a buzzsaw. Remember we talked about the fact that they got themselves straightened out, that they made a nice little run in the Big East tournament, and they were looking a little bit better. And hey, the Terps didn't get blown out as badly as Florida State did. So, but the Michigan story. I mean, when you think about what happened to them on the eve of the Big Ten tournament, their plane slides off the runway and. They play their first game in the Big Ten tourney in their practice uniforms. I mean, just crazy to think what they've done. But overall, like even you mentioned Villanova. Wisconsin slays the defending national champion. But you and I talked about this last week after the Selection Sunday wrapped up. We both said that Wisconsin as an 8 seed. Come on, what is that? But and I said to you, forget about Wisconsin. How would you like to be Villanova having to play Wisconsin in the second round potentially? And lo and behold, look what happened. So, there have been a couple upsets here and there.
Yeah, but Big Ten hasn't stumbled across itself. I mean, maybe Michigan State notwithstanding for a little while, but Big Ten's been okay. It's held up. It's
better than people expected. And the ACC, which everyone kind of regarded as top dog, they haven't looked quite as good.
Florida State.
But overall, I mean. The first round, and maybe there's a little bit of bitterness there from the local fans with the Terps being eliminated. That first round was a dud. I mean, that was as chalky as it gets for the first round. But at least in the round of 32, we've seen a couple upsets here and there. And like I said, I mean, that Michigan story, that's the team that's kind of looking like the team of destiny right now. And we'll see how it plays out when they play Oregon this week. But that's been fun to watch. But you haven't truly had that big-time Cinderella. I mean, Xavier's an 11 seed. I get that, but they're still, that's still a name.
I bought into Wichita State right on up till the kid couldn't get a shot off in the last minute.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. As much as no one cares to hear about my bracket, they were a team that, and this is a pool that I didn't really care about all that much. I picked them to go to the Final Four because I thought they were ridiculously way too low as far as being seeded. Wichita State was not a number 10 seed. But they lose to Kentucky, as you said, couldn't get a shot. A couple shots were blocked at the end there. But
and anything bad that happens to Duke, I celebrate. I just want to point that out to everyone.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that's what everyone's always looking.
What a weird, pod that was, right? All those teams playing down there amongst each other, right? North Carolina. I mean, it kind of divided the crowd. It really, and I know you weren't down at the Verizon Center for the Big Ten tournament, but just the whole notion that there could be 18,000 fans. I mean, I would say out in, where was it, Tulsa, Oklahoma, had all the Kansas fans, right? Like that was kind of nutty out there. But there, as far as home court advantage over the weekend, there wasn't anything really weird going on. You like to think to the second round. I thought Villanova would take a lot of people up to New York, except that they're not going, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's and the pod thing. It's strange. Sometimes you have some matchups where you kind of say, well, the higher seeded team is kind of at a disadvantage here, but we'll see how it plays out. I mean, as I said to you, and maybe it's because Maryland got knocked out. I've had a tough time kind of warming up to the rest of this tournament. The round of 32 has been better than the first round, which was a dud. So hopefully before it's over, we get a few more magical moments before one shining moments playing after the national.
If I can get you away from the WBC, but it'll be over on Wednesday night.
Yeah,
so by the time they start basketball again, it'll just be basketball, and, of course, our Caps. And head coach Barry Trotz joining us for the Bone Marrow Registry at Greenmount Station on Monday night. And we'll get some Wizards in here before it's all over with, too. Nice little run on up till opening day, and plenty of Ravens information, as well as all of Luke's work out at WNST.net. You can find him out on Twitter, Baltimore Luke. You can also email him, Luke at WNST.net. I am Nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. And anything you missed this week, you find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you are. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That lands there every morning courtesy of Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, breaking news as it was happening at a shotgun fashion 2 weeks ago. I'm sure there'll be some Orioles news here before too long, maybe even some Terps news. You'll get it all first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday driving you home. Finally, we are going to London with the Ravens in September. We're also going to Green Bay, Minnesota, Oakland, and Nashville. Those details will come next month when the NFL schedule comes out. But if you want to go to London, we do have space for you. Toss me an email. Check out the road trips at WNST.net. We'll get you aboard for that. A little hockey talk this week, a little football, a little March Madness, a little WBC. Whoo, need a towel around here. It's a busy time of the year. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.